is the Reproductive Healthcare Reform Bill 2019. This was debated in the Legislative Assembly in the state of New South Wales and is due to be debated in the upper house as it did pass the lower house. So we're going to look at it from a legalistic point of view and a common sense point of view and basically just go through the bill itself. Now this is the bill as it passed, it's got the amendments in it, and we might look at some other amendments as well. So let's just get right into it, see some of the points that they probably might have missed and begin straight away. So when you look at the legislation, this is just the name of the act, the commencement. The purpose is to reform the law, regulate the conduct of registered health professionals. All right, more regulation looks good to me so far. Then we come down to part 2. Now this is where it all begins. A person who is a medical practitioner may perform a termination on a person who is not more than 22 weeks pregnant. Okay, I don't need to get the graphic images of what a 22-week child looks like, but 21 weeks, which is below that threshold, I urge you to go look it up and obviously be ready for some graphic images, because essentially these are second trimester babies, which are very large, larger than you would expect. The medical practitioner may perform the termination only if the person has given informed consent to the termination. Now you think to yourself, all right, informed consent, and only if the person has given informed consent. So the medical practitioner must or may perform the termination, that's a iffy word there, if the person has given informed consent. So let's scroll down to the definitions and have a look and see what informed consent means. Here we go. Informed consent in relation to a termination performed by a medical practitioner means consent given freely and voluntarily and in accordance with any guidelines applicable to the medical practitioner. So freely and voluntarily. So how is that informed consent if it is freely and voluntarily? Informed would mean that it's educated, well thought through, not just a decision that you can make off the spot, freely and voluntarily. That seems to be contradicting the term informed. And then we come back up here and it just doesn't make sense at all. It seems like it's quite loose there to allow the person, if the person has given informed consent. Now this is probably the only part that seems to be well thought out, is that in an emergency. Completely understandable in those circumstances. Now, a specialist may perform a termination who is more than 22 weeks if the specialist medical practitioner considers that in all the circumstances the termination should be performed. Please define in all the circumstances, because there is no definition for in all the circumstances. And, so not all, and the specialist medical practitioner has consulted with another specialist who also considers that it should be performed. So essentially, specialist medical practitioner A rings up his good buddy, specialist medical practitioner B. They have a bit of a chuckle on the phone. They say, all right, go ahead with it, sign it off, and that's it. That's what we're dealing with here, to end someone's life. And the medical practitioner has obtained the person's informed consent. Again, the freely and voluntarily decided consent there. And is performed at a hospital and approved health facility. Okay, if you're going to do it, it's good to know they're doing it at an approved place. It does not require ancillary services. There's in considering, here we go, this is another gold mine of a part here that they've thought through. In considering whether a termination should be performed, a specialist must consider all relevant medical circumstances. Okay, fair enough. And here we go, the person's current and future. How can they consider that? How do they know what's going to happen? Are they psychics? Physical, psychological, and social circumstances. So if I feel like, because that's psychological and social, if I feel like I don't want the baby, well then they must consider that. And the professional standards and guidelines apply. So they can actually get in trouble for not listening to me if I say I feel like I don't want this baby, or I feel like it's going to be a burden on me and cause me psychological distress. It's going to cause me anxiety and depression. Much more severe than ending an innocent life, but anyway. Now that's fair. And then ancillary services, we don't need to go through that. Okay, requirement for information about counselling. A medical practitioner must, now this part gets me as well, because it says They must assess whether or not it would be beneficial to discuss with the person accessing counselling. So there's three words here: assess, and then beneficial, and then discuss. So they don't actually have to discuss with them whether counselling will be beneficial. They need to assess the situation to decide whether it would be beneficial to even discuss it. So they actually don't have to discuss it at all if they assess that it would not be beneficial, which it's just such a loose meaning there. And then if they do believe so, then they got to provide all the necessary information. See, this is the issue in what most people are pushing is if they're going to be pushing for this bill, at least provide alternative options, not just say, all right, abortion, 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 and then you must do it. Otherwise, you could lose your medical certificate, which is what has happened to a doctor in South Australia who almost lost his medical certificate because of their radical abortion laws. So it's just a really bad cycle that you've got going on here. So you've got to assess whether or not it would be beneficial to discuss it. So if it's not beneficial, then you don't even discuss it because you might hurt their feelings and then you lose your license, your practicing certificate to be a doctor, and lose everything that comes with your life. You get all the media coming over you, probably lose all your wealth, all your income, all your family, all your friends, because that's how it is nowadays. Registered health professionals who may assist, okay, midwives, nerves, etc. A registered health professional with conscientious objection, a person to perform a termination. Okay, so here basically the registered health practitioner must disclose their conscientious objection to the first person, to the person seeking the abortion. So if the request to perform about they must give information to the person how to locate a medical who does not have an objection. So if you're a registered health practitioner and you have an objection to this, for example, if a couple comes to you and says, we want to have an abortion because this is a girl and we wanted a boy. I'll get to that in a bit in more detail. And you say, no, I have an objection to that. Well, according to the law here, you must tell them how to locate or contact a medical practitioner who does not have a conscientious objection. Well, that sounds reasonable. Great, this law is looking like it's going to save so many lives. See the irony there? And then professional conduct or performance. So basically, all that says is, well, doctors can lose their jobs if they don't listen. And that a person does not commit an offence, basically protects them from criminal responsibility, which is, this is all they wanted, isn't it? To protection from criminal responsibility. So why are they putting in all these other options and all these other sections? Okay, so health facilities, sure, guidelines, we don't need to go into those. Now, this is the crux of this bill. Review in relation to gender selection. So, the Secretary of the Ministry of Health must, within 12 months after the commencement of this section, conduct a review of the issue of whether or not terminations are being performed for the purposes of gender selection and give the Minister a report about the review. Well, how is that going to stop that from happening in those 12 months? Secondly, this person could do a review the day after the bill is passed when maybe 0 abortions have been administered and then say, oh, well, 0 abortions were administered based on gender selection. I don't understand this part because the whole push by the left is that, we want pro-choice. The choice here is that there's going to be a lot of culturally different backgrounds that are going to be pushing for gender selection. So where's the feminist and leftist movement now to say that, no, we don't want gender selection? I don't understand it. The thing that gets me most is we go onto this section here. Proposed amendment by the Honourable Tanya Davies. Well done, Tanya. She, and I'm assuming she's a she because she's a woman, Tanya Davies MP, she put forward this amendment, proposed amendment, as you can see. Despite anything else in this Act, a medical practitioner may not perform a termination for the purpose of gender selection, or if the practitioner reasonably believes the termination is being performed for the purpose of gender selection. That is honestly one of the smartest things I have seen so far. That is a very, very reasonable proposed amendment. Do you want to know what happened to this amendment, people? First off, these are all available on the Hansard Parliament New South Wales website, so go see them for yourself if you don't believe me, because this is a very reasonable proposed amendment if this bill is going to go forward. It got rejected. I don't understand the 60 people that voted for it, why you would not put this in there. That is absolutely ridiculous. There was Again, the doctor in South Australia, there was an Indian couple that approached him and said, "Oh, we want to have an abortion." And he said, "Oh, do you mind asking me why?" And they said, "We don't want a girl, and it is a girl," because they're apparently frowned upon in their culture. Boys are more respected, whatever. I'm not going to go into Indian culture. Anyway, he objected to it. He had the news chasing after him. He was put on notice by the medical board and was ultimately given a 2-year review where he was given a caution in the end for simply saying that's not okay. And here it is right now. This got rejected despite anything else. How can they reject this? This is absolutely ridiculous. This is the most logical section that you could put in there, and it's a section that pleases gender equality. What are they talking about? This is absolutely, oh my god, I cannot. There's the specific proposed amendment. Go look it up. C2019-046A. Right, Tanny Davies, I'm pretty sure that was the MP that proposed it. How can you oppose that? It just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And then the other section here, the counselling part about them assessing whether they should give them counselling. This is another proposed amendment that a medical practitioner must, before performing a termination, ensure that the person has been offered the opportunity to receive counselling. They're not forcing it upon them, but that's better than saying, "Oh, we must assess the probability that they might need counselling to discuss it with them." This is the wording it should have been. This was another amendment that was rejected as well. I have no idea what these people are thinking. It's absolutely disgusting. Whether or not you agree with abortion, whether or not you agree with this bill, surely you at least agree that this should be in there and this should be in there. Two proposed amendments that were rejected. Anyway, so this is the putrid act that is going through the upper house now. I urge them to have a look at these simple points that we've raised, that many of us have raised, that everyone is shutting a blind eye to. If they're going to go forward with it, at least consider these very serious things right now. There's so many things that we could say that shouldn't go forward. Review Act within 5 years. That's not going to happen. If anything, if it will, it's not going to make any difference. It's probably going to make it more radical and remove gender from it altogether. Anyway, so this is the act. There's the dictionary, all the definitions there. I urge you to have a read for yourself and see how putrid it is by itself, because it is absolutely horrible, the things you see in it, especially these amendments that were rejected.